Hi, everyone. Before we get started with today's episode of Athlantic, I wanted to give a quick disclaimer about a dumb oversight Harry and I made throughout the episode. When we talk about Michaela Whittam and her incredible debut for Gotham FC at the news section and throughout Sport Math, we mispronounced her name. And we did it several times, and I just had to address it. It was, like I said, a dumb oversight on both of our parts that we just kind of went through and didn't even realize we made the mistake until the end. So, apologies for that. We hope that you enjoy the episode. It's a little bit of a longer intro section because we had a lot of news to get through with Whittam, with March Madness happening on both the men's and women's side, and we had to touch on the continued attacks on trans athletes by the American government. We hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. It's about away days, traveling on the road if you're an American fan, and the differences between both of our countries. We hope it's an interesting episode for you, as interesting as it was for us to record. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the episode.
Hello and welcome back to Athlantic, the show where an American and a Brit take turns crossing the pond to learn about sport culture in the USA and the UK. I am your resident Brit, Harry Collins.
And I am Adam Jordan, your resident American. I am finally getting off of my sickness. I've been sick for the past week, so I'm very excited. I'm like in my work life. Let me just jump in and just talk all about myself. I don't care how you are, Harry. No, but in my work life, I am kind of finally out of the point where I'm working every single weekend, which is really exciting. So it's just a great time. There's so much sports to talk about. We're in the middle of March Madness. It's very exciting. So I'm in a good spot. How are you, Harry?
I'm great. We mentioned way back in autumn that there are multiple parts of the calendar that feel like the beginning of the year more than New Year's, for instance, and March is one of them.
Yeah.
I just think so many, baseballs in spring training, oh my God, what's it called? Spring training?
Spring training, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Lock in.
Is it
You're
spring
good.
training? We're in. March Madness is upon us for both the men's and the women's starts today. Is that right?
So the women started today, the men started yesterday.
Amazing. We had the first race of the Formula One calendar last weekend. We got the second one sort of tomorrow. We got the sprint, and then we're into China, so the Formula One is back. Then football is soccer's really getting into like it in Europe, really getting into like it's really it's real crunch stage. I think March is kind of, at least in the UK, and I hate to go on about the weather again, like spring is trying its best, but it's like we're just dragging ourselves out of winter, and sport's like, hey, don't worry, we've got you. Here's all the interesting sport that's going to start again.
You're going to be sitting at a cricket ground somewhere very soon. Before
I can't wait. Grassroots cricket with like a tin of cider. Wow. Yes.
I will never forget the almost even more so than when we actually did it. But when you told me the last time I came to London to visit you, you said one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to go sit in a park and watch random people play beer league cricket.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, sure. And it was great. I loved it.
Exactly.
We ended up playing soccer right around them, and it was very fun. It was lovely.
we did. That's one of the joys of, even in London, we get to like peel away any grass patch in this city. In any city in the UK gets turned into a football pitch during the winter, and then a cricket pitch during the summer. It's fantastic. But there's way less picnics in the winter, so that's why we appreciate cricket a little bit more.
One of my favorite things... Sorry, one more tangent real quick.
No, please.
One of my favorite things about flying somewhere is when you get to the place where you're about to be and you can fly over and you can see all the different like sports fields that you're flying over. And in America, it's so many baseball fields.
It's a lot.
So many baseball fields. And it's wild. And then when you fly over the UK, I'm like, oh yeah, there's no baseball fields here, and it's just so many soccer fields and so many like random parks. And you can't really tell that it's cricket, but I'm sure there's cricket being played there.
The baseball field is so recognizable.
Yeah.
From the there's nothing else in the entire world looks like that from the air. And when I come into Carolina, as I do more frequently than some Carolinians, yeah, it's always like a little rush when I'm like, yeah, we're back.
Amazing.
But similarly, I love walking through American cities and finding like pickup basketball courts, and then you walk through London and you find like football cages, especially in South London. An episode about this episode is going to be about grassroots sports.
Yes.
Let's scrap
we're
everything
pivoting
we
on
plan.
the fly. We're gonna improv this thing, maybe. No, but let's get into some news and current events. So one of the interesting things that has happened has actually been in the world of soccer, but on the American side, in the American professional ranks of the NWSL, we had a very interesting debut, didn't we, Harry?
Yes, I don't remember what I was doing when I was 14 years old and 8 months, but McKenna Whitman made their debut for Gotham FC. Firstly, incredible name for a footballer. Secondly, incredible name for a football team. And they played the last 7 or 8 minutes against Seattle, as you said, in the NWSL. What an incredible record to just obliterate. Also, amazing faith in a young player. That's, on the one hand, that's how you build superstars, right? We're going to remember that name forever, like we remember Linda Caicedo from the last World Cup. But also, that's suddenly, the question turns to, that's a talent that you really need to protect, and that's still that's still a minor, right? So the implications in treating that talent in the right way sort of flood through in a way that you don't normally have to discuss when you're talking about more senior professional debuts. Also, I really love this story because it's another deviation away from what is quite a well-trodden path. In the US, there's a very obvious path into professional sports, and it happens a lot later than this. And something that we'll discuss way down the line is the difference between the development of talent in European games, rugby, cricket, football, where you go through academies and you go through either county sports and build up while you're going through school, or in America where you go through the collegiate system, because one of them produces professionals well after they're physically developed in college, and they're adults, and the other one we get youngsters, we get 14 years old, we get 16 years old in football quite a lot, and these are still children, they're still minors, and you have to be really careful with that professional footballer. It's crazy. It's absolutely wild.
Yeah, it is. It was amazing to see that. There've been some really interesting conversations about what the ethics and what the merits are of having somebody so young make a debut against full on adults. And there have been incredible discussions that I don't think we're necessarily even qualified to have on this. No. That I would highly recommend. There's plenty of other podcasts and shows I've seen that are especially women's sports focused, especially women's soccer focused. I believe Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird on their podcast talked about it. But it's a really interesting discussion because actually this past October we had a similar debut with somebody of the same age. I think she might have been a month younger than McKenna Whitman is, with somebody with an, I would argue, even better soccer name, Stella Spitzer. Incredible. Yeah. Also at 14 years old, made her debut for Carolina Ascent FC, actually a team that was new as of this past year in the USL Super League, which is kind of our second tier of women's soccer. There's also USL promo relegation. We can talk about that another time.
Yeah, we can.
But yeah, just fascinating to see, and really cool to watch the game grow in a little bit of a different way. And I can only wish the best for both of these people.
And while that's an amazing instance of a big name bursting onto the scene, as we mentioned at the top, we're in the middle of March, which means there's a whole competition dedicated to athletes making their name for teams who are going to be competing for the NCAA title, the collegiate basketball title. We did a little bit on TikTok earlier this week. Obviously, I've got 3 different Carolina bits of merchandise just because I'm really hoping for our Tar Heels. Do we see anyone other than our arch rivals doing well this time around?
Yeah, on the men's side, I have a hard time seeing anybody beating Duke. They're just so dominant. I had to watch them win a championship in person at the ACC men's tournament, and the women's tournament too. The women's team is really good too. So yeah, it's going to be tough to see anything else. But from the March Madness, how available is it over there? I mean, other than the accessibility on time zones, like is there like one channel that plays a featured game? Can you access it everywhere? Like I don't know how the international broadcast rights work for that. So what are you able to see?
So I since I've been at Carolina, have really fought this fight to try and watch UNC basketball.
There's one man on the streets with a sign and picketing outside of somewhere in the middle of the streets of London, chanting for his rights to watch March Madness, and it's you.
Yes. Actually, while I was making the show notes today, I had it on in the background. Sky Sports have a channel that Sky Sports Plus is basically anything else that isn't on like our main channels, which is all like normally seasonal stuff. And today, and I think throughout the next like 2 or 3 weeks, it will be March Madness. However, unfortunately, they only show one game at a time, and it's like, what's the biggest game tonight? So while I was writing our show notes, I was watching Duke absolutely annihilate. Is it St. Mount or something?
Mount St. Mary's. There's a St. Mary's.
Mount St. Mary's.
And Mount St. Mary's. Yes. This time of year, we all learn about different smaller schools. It's very fun. So are you? Is there any of the women's tournament available there? Like maybe even the championship?
Yes, I think later into, not immediately at the beginning. Yeah. Just today, the coverage was on the men's. I think if time zones work, it'll just swap to like the next best game, and if that's the women's game, that could be it. But later on into the tournament, where they break slightly in schedule, then yes, I believe it is available, and I'll watch and I'll tell you.
Let us know. It's been a very fascinating, like the past several years, especially for the women's tournament, there has been a massive push toward equity. Like a lot of the like conversation around women's sports in the US mostly revolves around basketball and soccer. And the March Madness, like there was, I think it was 4 years ago, there was a photo that went viral of like the weight room, quote unquote, facilities that they gave the women's team staying in their hotels for their regional match, or for maybe it was even their Final Four. And it was like a set of weights in a ballroom. So like it just was not up to what the men's team get. And there's been a lot of momentum around that. It's beyond just a viral post, but they actually for a while weren't able to use the March Madness moniker. The branding was different, so that's all equal now over the past few years. So still like work to do, but last year the ratings for the championship game, Final Four, was incredible. But so there's a big battle for equity that kind of continues to go on, including on the front, and this is something that I, as the American side of this podcast, have been meaning to say for a while, but fairly recently in the news, I think it actually was about a month ago, there was an executive order that our current administration passed through that regarded sports, and we're not here to talk about the merits of any politics or anything, but this one affects sports specifically, and frankly, it's dumb. And that's the fact that they have made it so that federally, you're only allowed to participate in sports based on the sex you are assigned at birth, which basically means, hey, if you're trans, you can't play in the sport that your gender is. So, There's less than 10 in the NCAA. There are fewer than 10 trans athletes. That's according to the president of the NCAA himself, a guy by the name of Charlie Baker. And they had to change their policy over it because of this executive order and just political pressures. So let's stop using sports as your backward, terrible way of getting your weird policies in.
Also, the number of spaces where trans people can feel safe and included is already very small. We don't need to we don't need to wipe another one of those spaces out of play. Also, this sort of ruling has far-reaching implications into women's sport beyond this as well. This is a very important subject that needs to be handled far more importantly than us debating it quickly at the top of an episode. This is something that is worth its own episode. It's an important topic of conversation, but we want to make sure that anyone listening knows exactly where we stand on this. This is a horrible ruling. Don't even pick at that fight. It speaks to, firstly, people have said for a long time, keep politics out of sport. If you think politics isn't in sport, you're very naive. Sport has only ever been politics, and that is unfortunately a fact. And secondly, sport is such a visceral, such a abstract and emotionally charged thing that we share. It is so unfair to weaponize that against members of the community that support sport.
Totally.
So yeah, as we said, it's dumb. And hey, I'm British, so I'm going to say I think they're dumb people as well. The people that came up with the law, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, you could say a lot about my fellow countrymen. Anyway, Harry has come up with a wonderful topic of discussion for this week.
Yes. Just before we break into that, I need to give you your sports math question.
Oh my goodness! Yes.
Adam.
Duh. Sorry.
So, no worries. So for anyone also playing at home, whack open your notes app because this one's a doozy. Adam, I would like you to tell me which of the following numbers is higher. Is it number A, the number of teams in the March Madness bracket 2025, plus the number of races on this year's Formula One calendar, plus the grade that McKenna Whitman is currently in at school, because they are 14. They are at school. That is number A. So add those three numbers up. Or is it B, the season of the NHL that is currently being played? Obviously, you know, how many years of the NHL, how many years of the Stanley Cup have we played? Plus, minus, I want that number, minus the number of times the Chicago Cubs have won the World Series. Remember, they waited a long time for another one, but how many have they won in total? So, which number is higher? A or B? Wicked. What we're going to do now is jump into the main topic of conversation today, which is something that I'm absolutely desperate to talk about with you, because it's a wonderful way of interrogating the way that sports culture in the UK and the US deviate completely, and that is something that we would refer to as away days.
Not a term that we have here, but yes,
not a term.
I love it. Going
and
on
I
the
didn't
road.
even know. Exactly, I didn't even know that wasn't a term until we discussed this a couple of days ago, and you were like, "Yeah, no, these are road games you're talking about." And it's like, I guess you can drive if you want. And then I forgot that you have horrible train infrastructure, which is how we do it. The away day, and unfortunately we try to keep this a little bit more generalized, but this is probably going to be a conversation a little bit more specifically about football, although there's a lot to say about specifically rugby and cricket in the UK as well. But football's where we see a huge number of passionate away fans traveling to other stadiums every week to support their team in a way that I thought was probably universal. It definitely happens around Europe. And then when we've discussed this in the past, you've mentioned it's a little less common here. And then it doesn't take a genius to work out why it's a little bit less common or a little bit less of a cultural thing in the US. So that posits the question, what are your experiences with traveling to see your team away from home?
Yeah, and I want
away from their home stadium.
Right, and I want to lay this out specifically. We're not going to be in this episode. We're going to plan to do another episode on this probably, but we're not going to be talking about neutral site or like championships, that kind of thing, or at least specifically, or like going to a sporting event that's not one team versus another team, like a race or something like that, or a tennis match or something along those lines. So this will be kind of one-on-one competitive sports, one-on-one meaning team versus team. But my personal experience of the way it is, I was racking my brain for this. I actually don't really have a ton of experience with like the team where I live is on the road. I'm going to go follow them.
Sure.
To be honest, and this is something that I want to, now that like I really think about it, I want to do some more like anecdotal research on, like, I would love to put out like a poll or a survey or something on how many people do, I guess it wouldn't be anecdotal, but how many people actually do kind of go from their town, their home where their team plays, to follow them on the road versus what my experience with it is, which is wherever I've lived that isn't where my team is, plays their home games, when they come to my home, going there. So a little bit different than like and some of that, and we'll get into this, some of that is very much geography, but some of it is that there's a risk that comes with going on the road. So my experience is definitely more so with like I've been a fan of Pittsburgh sports my whole life. Whenever the Penguins would come to Raleigh, when I lived there, to play the Hurricanes, I would go pretty much every time and root on the Penguins. Or when I lived in Washington, D.C., and same thing, when the Penguins would come to Washington or the Pirates would come to Washington, I would go to their games. So that's basically my experience with it. But I'll let you build this out a little bit more.
Sure. So bizarrely, we actually have quite similar experiences there. I have been a fan of Brighton, the football team in the UK. And for our American listeners who don't know, Brighton is on the south coast of the UK, and I grew up sort of slap bang in the middle of England. Now, to get from, and this is going to sound silly again to my American friends, because this does not sound like a big distance at all. But from our home in the middle of England, it's about 130 miles or so to Brighton, which some people in the US do on like their commute to work, which is crazy. I get it. I know it's silly, and it takes a couple of hours because like London is right in the way. So my dad and I would more frequently go to away games when Brighton were playing teams in the middle of England as well, or slightly further north, because they were literally easier to get to than Brighton was. So I think until I went to university, also in Brighton, don't tell my mum, that's absolutely why I went to university in Brighton, until I went to college, I'd probably send the majority of games away, and that's why the away day and the away day experience is really informative and really special to me, because it's chaos. It's such good fun.
What makes it chaos? What makes it fun? Because here, as an American, my perception of an away day is, or what that looks like, is I have seen at every soccer game that I've seen over there, either personally or on TV or basically in every media for my whole life, I have seen like literal segregation of, if you're a fan of this team, you go over here into this section, and there is nobody pretty much outside of that section, and that we will have not armed, maybe armed, I don't know, security guards. We can get into the security of it all, I guess, but we will have security guards as a human barricade between this like. So my understanding of it was like, oh my God, you people are so violent towards your fellow fan that you must be separated by force. So please explain to me why that is, or if that's true.
Unfortunately, yeah, you're spot on. And I wish we could sort of repeal that. Obviously, hooliganism in soccer, in football, was a terrible thing. And from it, we have some really important legislation. And
when you say hooliganism, you mean specifically because, like, that again, hooligan, like, for us, that's like an old-timey term for like a bad young person. Like,
sorry,
hooligan, like a hooligan is like a violent thing over there.
We should. I'm gonna open a note in our tab. It's gonna be like a USA versus UK glossary, because you think hooligan is a good thing.
Well, it's not necessarily a good thing, but it's like a it's like a little bit of like a
silly.
You're a young whippersnapper. You like good hooligan.
What a hooligan, and we're like literally put him in prison. Yes. So in the late 1960s, I think it was 1967, there was a football match between Manchester United and West Ham at the West Ham Stadium called Upton Park. Which was a fabulous stadium that's no longer there in sort of East London. Sorry. The game, during the game, Manchester United were very, very close to winning the league. And because we didn't have segregation, like way more Manchester United fans than people expected came to West Ham and were just sat everywhere. And because they knew they were going to win the league, and this win would, I didn't think it secured it, but would definitely make it very, very probable that they were going to win the league. The Manchester United fans were very jubilant, and there was a little bit of it said that the stadium was swamped by disorderly Manchester United fans, and they would like start, kerfuffles, to use similarly fun, light language, amongst fans with West Ham fans who are also sort of notoriously hard and passionate home fans. So that was in May. Then Manchester United won the league, and in September, which is basically, in terms of the season, that's only about 2 months later. We finished May, the season finishes in June, and then it comes back in August or September. Basically, one of the next games, Manchester United went to play at Upton Park again at the beginning of the next season, and the West Ham fans sort of took their revenge. And following that, more kerfuffling. And following that, segregation was implemented across the UK. It's now implemented across Europe for other reasons.
Segregation by fans. By type of fan.
Yes. Yes.
By anything else, by the color shirt you're wearing.
To be clear, yes. The segregation of fans is now, it's absolutely commonplace across football. It's also, and this is an interesting point, because it's not commonplace across rugby or cricket. However, literally next month, segregation amongst fans, home and away fans in rugby, will be trialled for a very interesting reason that piggybacks on, while the reason for segregating fans was obviously heinous, and we obviously condone violence at any sports event, what it's produced is this what I think is quite an amazing tribal participatory element of the fan experience, whereby in English football you arrive with your couple thousand away fans, and these are the most passionate, the most vocal fans, and you effectively try to participate in the game by bringing as much atmosphere as you can. There are rules about standing in most English stadiums. Safe standing is now a thing, but basically if you sit at home, you have to sit down for the majority of the game. That rule really isn't enforced with away fans who get to sort of stand the whole game, sing their hearts out, and support their team as best they can on the road, which means a lot if you're playing, from Brighton to Newcastle, and the Brighton team can still hear you singing. That's amazing, and you are part of like what is quite a tribal.
Yeah, I want to. So it is one of the best things about sports for society is that it allows us, just as humans, to simulate conflict in a way that's not destructive toward a society. Like we're artificially separating ourselves into different groups and having these competitions on the field, and we can support these various groups. And sports absolutely means something to community for sure. Sports is politics. Sports is society. There's no separation. But the stakes are lower. The stakes of the actual result of the game itself is lower than what real conflict could be. So that is a good thing. But it's interesting that, like, it is a real visceral thing. You are bringing your fans in to give yourself more of an advantage, or less of a disadvantage, I would say. Okay, so...
Yeah, exactly.
So...
Now, what's really interesting is, obviously, the segregation of fans was brought into football for a safety reason, and what's the ultimate outcome has been the enhancement of atmosphere at football matches. Something that, as I mentioned, rugby are trialling, bringing segregation of fans between home and away fans into rugby is actually to boost atmosphere. It's got nothing to do with disorderly conduct. A couple of episodes ago, we spoke about rugby being like a more respectful game than football. That extends to the fans, and a mix of home and away fans often sit very cordially and, share a bit of banter and are very friendly at rugby games. But individual players are asking for the segregation of fans so that atmosphere can be boosted. Which lends credit to the theory that I'm singing for 90 minutes at a Brighton away game. We are contributing to the atmosphere, and it is changing what's happening on the pitch. Obviously, that's a bit hyperbolic, but if it's happening, if rugby want to emulate that that shows that it is a powerful thing.
Yeah, because that was actually going to be one of my questions, because like we just learned about how rugby is very cordial. Why are they separating the fans? So it's good to know that it's to enhance things and not to get rid of a problem. So I think one thing that would be helpful, because we started from the top talking about how the experiences are so different. You've mentioned fans arriving all at the same time. Walk me through what it looks like, because I think for Americans it's different. It's definitely different, and I think a little compare and contrast would be good here.
Yeah, exactly. So the away day, if you are going from the city that your team is from, often you are going in the same coaches. Like, you are moving, not to lend more of like a comparison to like a military action, but you are all moving together in group, in convoy. You all arrive to the city that you're playing in,
front lines,
and everyone disembarks, the front lines, and then you go to like segregated pubs. There will be like in any given city. I remember my dad and I went to a game in Sheffield, and we went to a away fan friendly pub.
Wait a minute. So a pub in Sheffield, or a pub in whatever town it might be.
Yep.
They'll have a pub that, like, why would that pub accept you? For business? Like, just to make money?
Yeah,
or like,
it's good.
Okay,
yeah, because we're all going to turn up. Unfortunately, football, it's tied to, the consumption of alcohol. We're going to, and we get there well before the game. So,
I'm going to run up a tab.
And this will be, exactly. But, even the clubs will help facilitate when like, fan groups contact clubs. They'll be like, yeah, here are the pubs that are more like away team friendly, because we don't want away fans going to pubs full of home fans, because football fans plus alcohol equals conflict, unfortunately still.
Yeah.
And that is something that, we want to move away from. But at the moment, yeah, so we all arrive to a separate pub, or two or three, because there are 3,000 of us. Then we all pretty much move together to the stadium. We go through a different gate into a different part of the stadium. And this is typical. Not every stadium is the same. Sometimes you're going in some mix, but it is, especially in the Premier League, they are all separated. Then you watch your game, whatever the outcome, the away fans will be let away from the stadium at a different time. So not all of the home fans and away fans leave together as well.
So they don't
they're
want them
separated.
together making contact at all. Wow.
No, and now I'll have to check this. There are guidelines on stadium design where the dispersion of fans happens at a certain rate, so that where there might be points of contact. Unfortunately, for the Brighton Stadium, our new Brighton Stadium, everyone kind of gets there by train. So the point of contact between home and away fans actually happens quite quickly, and that's why it's so well policed.
Yeah.
But yeah, typically the away fans are sort of funneled down a completely different street until they're just sort of released. And then you get on your bus and you go home.
Can we also just have a moment of self-awareness here, even though I don't think either of us are engaged in violence at stadiums? That
Yeah, sure.
that this is, I'm certain this is a male problem. Like,
Oh, 100%.
we just can't.
Yeah, it's yeah.
What?
Also, and this is a different topic for another episode. It's a cocaine problem. It's a drug problem as well. Yeah,
Okay.
there is a cocaine epidemic in football fandom. Obviously, that is not something that we condone. It's not something that I've ever taken part in. But yeah, one day we're going to talk about how cocaine is ruining football. It's a huge thing, and it's not for today. Anyway, so that is what away day looks like in the UK. Now, there are a couple of different sort of varieties of the away day or the road game in the US, depending on what level of sport you're watching, right?
Yeah, no, there's definitely a big difference. Whether you're in college or talking about the pros. So the college game, very different. In the pros, it's pretty much a complete free for all. I've never personally myself heard of any sort of segregation of fans or like that. That's just not a thing. The team owners just want to sell seats to whoever will buy them. It's a shame, and it can be tough for the fan experience for those home fans when you have when you've got, your team is bad and there's another team that's popular that's coming into town that's really good, and sometimes the away game can actually feel more like a home game. My personal experience at Carolina Hurricanes games as a Penguins fan when I was in high school and living in Raleigh, it was an amazing time for me because the Hurricanes were a perennial basement dweller. The tickets were super cheap. There's so many transplants from Pittsburgh that come to watch these games. And so the games would literally, they would feel like home games. It was incredible. For Hurricanes fans, it was terrible. They have since reclaimed, because they've gotten good again. They've since reclaimed that. But it's a wild perspective. So again, you don't get anything like that basically. And there's certainly no, the Penguins aren't organizing people to go over. And this is the NHL is a little bit, it's definitely a much smaller sport in America. This is the same thing for the NFL. I think that would even be a better example. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the Philadelphia Eagles are not organizing fans themselves to go over, get to a place at the same time. You're just calling up your buddies that are friends saying, hey, you want to go to the game, and taking your car, probably your car there, go in there, tailgating, which isn't a thing in the UK. It's where, if you're unfamiliar, you're literally out of the back tailgate of your car, making food and just drinking beers and whatever outside of your car in the parking lot before the game.
So I've been we're 12 episodes in and we haven't been able to spend more than 10 seconds talking about tailgating. I have a couple of questions.
Okay, let's do it.
Number one, are we all tailgating in the same place, like away fans and home fans?
Yes. Yes.
So it's a very cordial space.
I mean,
Like
there'll
it's
be some...
it's kind of a party, right?
Yeah, it's like a part. I mean, there'll be, people will be giving each other hard times. People will be drunk and say stupid stuff.
Sure.
You'll have fight, especially in the NFL. Like, the NFL is probably the closest to where things truly do get violent. Like, you will see videos every week, every other week of like fans getting into scuffles.
Sure.
It's usually nothing too serious, beyond like, maybe somebody has to, I say too serious as, beyond somebody having to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
But like, it's not, you don't hear of like deaths or anything really.
Right.
So yeah, it's an interesting thing. It is pretty cordial for the most part, but there are certainly exceptions.
But even the fact that intermingling, even if it isn't like promoted or like encouraged, it happens, and people like, it's really nice that doesn't feel like a space that you're either invading or that the away fans can sort of come in and still have a good time. Like totally. There's no separation. That sounds kind of amazing.
Yeah, it is. And like honestly, it's kind of fun because sometimes you get into you can get into some interesting conversations with people. Like I mean, and I'm sure this happens. Like I'm well aware too that I'm sure it's not impossible that people do see each other sometimes, but like
no.
It's always interesting to like get into those conversations with either your fellow fan on the away day or like with a home fan that's just curious about like, hey, why are you a fan of this team? And those interactions and experiences are just so much fun. So
I think we'll need to write a list of like Harry's, like when when you were a baby and you're like, oh, Adam's first steps, and like when you went to kindergarten, it's like Adam counted to 10. We'll do like Harry's first tailgating,
yes,
and we'll do like Adam's first away day,
yes,
Adam's first fight. Oh my god! No, there's nowhere near that much. There really isn't. I don't even played how much violence still exists.
Sure.
Tailgating, is that just pro sports? We doing that at college as well?
Definitely doing college, more so in the college space in a lot of places for football. Tailgating is mostly a football centric thing. To your point, there is a difference in pros and college. In college sports, you actually do have there is a lot of mingling for sure, but there are sections often in mostly basketball and football on the men's and women's side where you'll have sections for the away fans. A lot of that. There's always a section where the families of the players and staff will sit, usually right near the bench, and usually it's the fan section is in that area as well. The schools themselves in college sports have to, by either contract in a non-conference game, so if you're playing somebody, so if North Carolina is playing Florida, who is not in their conference, and Florida's the away team, North Carolina would have to allocate some of their home stadium tickets to Florida for them to sell to their fans, because of a contractual agreement in the when they decide to play each other. When you're playing somebody within your conference, the conference has a rule that dictates you have to give a certain number of things, and that's just kind of a historical fairness thing. Is like hey, they're coming to your place to play, the least you can do is give their fans a chance to see the game. And it's always funny because usually those seats are put in the worst possible place, like at UNC's football stadium. They're like the away section is like in the sunniest, hottest part of the stadium. So it's pretty interesting. And then the other piece is sometimes you'll have is teams will have their bands come and play.
That's cool. That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah. It's really cool. You have a pep band, a marching band. It's fun.
When this was probably within weeks of meeting you, when I came for my study year abroad at UNC, my dad fortuitously was sent to North Carolina for work. Really good luck. An amazing timing. So he came over and we went to a UNC football game against Notre Dame. Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, there you go.
Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And then we were sat in a pretty sunny spot, surrounded by people wearing green and gold, and we realized pretty quickly what we thought was the away end. And a very sweet Fighting Irish fan told us, "No, honey, we just like each other, and we're all going to sit near each other. You can sit wherever you want in here." To which my dad was completely bamboozled. He loved it. It was very good. We lost badly because UNC was not a good football school then. But yeah, that was. I went to one football game. I went to a couple of basketball games. I was very lucky. But seeing another team's band. I watched us play NC State. NC State's band just rocked up, and they're playing at the same time, and they're like having this duel of music.
Yeah.
Which I'm saying like almost like I'm making fun, but I admitted not 15 minutes ago that I sing for 2 hours.
Yeah.
When I go and watch Brighton and Burnley. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing, just a slightly different lens on it.
Which it is exactly. It is much like our two languages. We're speaking the same language, just with different accents. Yeah. And it's so much fun. Like, I can't wait for, like, and I know a lot of Americans feel the same way. Like, I can't wait to go back over there. As we're recording this, I'm visiting you in just over a month, and I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to go to see Brighton, whether that hopefully be Wembley or at the Amex. Like, I've been like, I'm ready. I'm ready. I've got the chance down. I'm excited.
Amazing.
So yeah, so that's part of it. There's actually one other piece that I failed to mention on the pro ticket side. Going back to the spot where, like I was saying, you get a lot of teams that will, if they're a worse team or if there just happen to be a high concentration of transplants from one market to another, you'll get a lot of away fans at a team's home stadium. The Los Angeles Rams, quite infamously, I think it was 3 years ago, for a playoff game, when they were distributing their tickets, they set it so that only if your credit card was coming from a zip code or a postal code for over there, if it was from a zip code within the Los Angeles, market, could you actually buy a ticket? And people got around it on the secondary market, but they were so worried that the away team was going to have so many of its fans come in and ruin the atmosphere.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wild. But over there, you can only get seats in like the away end, right? Like how do you go about that? Like, are you buying them from the home club, or does the away club get an allocation?
So, really good question, because this bleeds slightly into a small problem. Yes, the away team have an allocation. It is, I think, 10% of the home team stadium up to 3,000. I think there's a cap. You can take up to 3,000. So, and that's sort of an incentive for like bigger stadiums. I don't know if that's actually a hard and fast rule, but I know Bournemouth, for instance, play in a stadium of less than 13,000 seats. I think it's like 11,700. So you couldn't have 3,000 of those seats, because then, that's almost a third, or it's over a third. So I think it's about 10%, which makes those seats really, really valuable. And they are sold through the traveling team's home ticket office.
Got it.
So okay. If I wanted to buy our next away ticket, I'd do that through the Brighton ticket office. However, obviously, ticket scalping and the secondary market is a thing that I think every football team is trying to press out, because excluding that in football would make the crowd slightly safer, and obviously teams want to retain the value in those tickets. It doesn't stop you, like I have done, if you get a ticket with a friend who is a friend of, a supporter of the home team, sitting in the home end as an away fan. And there you do have to be a little bit careful. People will, if you certainly wouldn't wear away team colours. I sat with one of my absolute best friend at an Arsenal match, and I've been with him at a West Ham match, both times where I was supporting the other team. I was supporting Brighton, and he was like, absolutely don't wear your shirt. Obviously I wouldn't, because I'm in a sea of red and I don't want to wear blue, but if you score, don't say a thing.
You just have to stand there.
You have to, and you have to complain. Oh, damn it, they scored. Oh, I hate that. And you sit on your hands. I wasn't very good at it, and he really told me off, which was totally valid. He was like protecting me, because you'll get thrown out.
That's
because you don't belong there. If you are like disturbing and you're in the home end as an away fan, it's more often than not you'll be ejected. So behave yourself. If you sneak in, don't sneak in. Obviously, do it legitimately, but if you sneak in, you have to really behave yourself. So yeah, the last facet of this deviation that needs addressing. Obviously, one of the key reasons why these we're talking in we're talking the same language but in a different accent. In sport, obviously, we are comparing in this instance the Premier League and the NFL, which are spread over completely differently sized countries.
Yes.
So, I just want to hit you with these 4 stats.
Okay.
In the UK, the average away trip in the Premier League is 109 miles. A lot of those.
That is like almost that for the North Carolinians around here. That is like the distance from Charlotte to Greensboro, like a little bit farther. Like that is not far.
It's the same distance from Indianapolis to Cincinnati.
Of course you can.
Crazy.
Amazing.
The long and that includes like a lot of the London clubs only going a couple of miles, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Newcastle are doing a lot of heavy lifting in this stat. The longest Premier League away game is 347.5 miles between Newcastle and Bournemouth, right? So a round trip that's about 600 miles, but 347 is the same from Jacksonville, which is a city that you actually famously forgot on this podcast,
true.
from Jacksonville to Atlanta, which people do drive like frequently in the US.
Very drivable.
The average. Now, I calculated this and then realized I made a criminal mistake. The average away trip in the NFL, if there weren't conferences, which actually bends the statistics.
Sure.
The average distance between teams is 1,085 miles. That's insane. The average
We're pretty
trip.
big over here.
And can you guess the 2 NFL teams that are furthest apart?
Yep.
And B, just give me a rough idea of how far they are apart.
It's got to be Miami to Washington to Seattle.
Yeah.
And
do you
that
want to
is
put
like
a number on that?
And then that
there's no way you would have known this, but
it's probably like 4,000 miles.
It's 3,370.
Yeah, I guess
means,
yeah. Wild.
Yeah, sure, but it means people in Miami are only 600 miles closer to people in Seattle than you are to me.
Yeah.
Now, and there's an ocean between us.
There's an ocean, and that just goes to show you a lot. Like, I think that a lot of the away sport, and again, this is something I would love to just like pull people on, but I would guess that most of the away support that you see at games is not people traveling. And again, unless the teams are local, like the Giants playing the Jets, who literally play in the same stadium, or Baltimore, the Ravens playing DC. The Commanders. Yeah. Like it's probably not people traveling from home to away. It's probably people who
they're like
Yes, like me, who have family that are from somewhere or are from somewhere else themselves, have different allegiances. Like, it's actually interesting, and I genuinely, not to go all Pittsburgh centric again, but like, I think Pittsburgh is a great test case for that. Like watching Penguins games, because there's certain markets where you'll be able to tell like where people have moved from Pittsburgh. So in Washington,
Yeah.
in Raleigh, in Los Angeles is a big one. Arizona, when there was a team there, like you'll see people in a lot of these cities that are further south than Pittsburgh. They have a great Penguins fan following, and it's because a lot of people moved from Pittsburgh to those cities.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I think that's all we have on the away day.
Yeah.
What we're gonna do is we're actually gonna do a sort of second parter to this, talking about a broader idea of sports tourism, where you travel further than you would for your team, or you travel to a specific event. The motivations behind some sort of sports tourism, and then how sports tourism is being almost manipulated somehow, is the branching out of the NFL into other markets. Who does that benefit? And then the removal of or similarly the moving of critical games in European football being moved to countries that are sport washing. These are things that we want to talk about, but we're going to do in a later episode, because we realize
a teaser,
that,
Harry. What a teaser.
I know. And it's not even going to be the next episode. You don't know when it's going to come. So unless you have anything
Sport
else,
math me. It's time. It's time.
Perfect. We are going to roll through. So just a quick reminder on the current scores between the two of us.
Since the restart point at episode 10.
Yes, which you are 2-0 ahead.
Yeah.
Now, we said you get a point for every individual piece of trivia in the question answered correctly, and then you get a bonus point if you get the crux of the question right as well. So the final number. Now, what I've done here is, I think I'm playing pretty aggressive here, and I've given you a multi-part sport math where I think you're going to fall down a little bit more. If you don't, you're going to have a colossal lead by the end of this, and I've got some real work to do. So just a quick reminder, Adam, I want you to tell me, for your bonus point, is number A or number B higher? Number A is the number of teams in the March Madness bracket 2025, plus the number of races on the 2025 Formula One calendar, plus the grade at school that McKenna Whitman is in. Or number B, letter B, the number of seasons that the NHL is in right now, minus the number of times the Chicago Cubs have won the World Series.
Okay. I actually feel surprisingly confident about this, but I need one clarification.
Sure.
The number of teams in March Madness, is that saying in each tournament, or is that saying in both tournaments together?
This is just in I assume
tournament.
Each is both the same number,
Yes,
right?
they're both the same. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so each tournament. Okay,
As
so
of
that...
the beginning of the bracket, how many in each tournament?
Got
it. Good clarification.
Thank you. I'm very adept at my clarifying questions.
You are.
It's one of my skills. I'll put it on my resume. Number of teams in March Madness, that is 68. I know that for a fact. The number of races on the F1 calendar, which I know is controversial because I know a lot of people think it's too many. Those people mostly being affiliated with teams and or the drivers themselves. I
think it is too many.
I know it's in the 20s. I think it's 24. I think it's around 24, so I'm going to stick with 24 as my number.
Okay.
Shame I won't be able to watch the Chinese Grand Prix because it starts at 3 a.m. our time. So you get some nice morning sport, which you seldom get, so lucky you.
I love it.
So 68 plus 24. My Achilles heel is the arithmetic. That I believe is 92. I don't have my calculator with me. And I'm refusing to use my phone because of pride. The grade McKenna is in. The grade McKenna Whitman is in. So she's 14 years, 8 months old when she's made her debut. 8 months in the past here from March is February. Well, February, January, December, November, October, September, August, July. So she's a summer birthday. That makes it tough because that means she's either young for her age or very old for her age, for her grade. So she's 14. She is either in 7th or 8th grade.
Okay.
I'm going to go with she's in 8th grade. I'm just going to assume that she's older because she's a professional athlete. So that would be 100 for that first number. The number of NHL seasons that we are in, 2017 was the 100th anniversary season. So 16-17, I should say. So we are now in 24-25. So that's plus 8 there. So that's 8 seasons. So I think we're in the 108th season. And the number of times that the Cubs have won the World Series, they won it in 16. They hadn't won it in 108 years. So that's 1908. I believe they had one more before that.
Okay.
They may have had more than that, but I think they had one more. So I'm going to go with 3. And we're subtracting those two numbers, so 105. Yep. So I'm going to say the first number, 100, is less than 105. The second number. Final answer.
You are correct. You get the bonus point.
Okay.
The number of teams in the March Madness, absolutely spot on. The number of races on the 25 calendar, absolutely spot on. That was also 24. We are in the 208th season of the NHL, and the Chicago Cubs
have won
the 100. Yep, good point. 108th. I did say 200. I sure did say 200.
Things are not as old over here as they are over there, Harry.
Yeah, wow. This episode is coming from the year 2125. And then, yes, you're right. The number of times the Chicago Cubs have won the World Series is 3. I hoped it would catch you out that there was such a long gap between the two, but they did have 2 in the early 20th century. However, I have McKenna's Whitman's grade as the 9th grade.
Whoa,
so
okay.
I don't think you've got that one right. So
no.
You don't get all 6 points. You do, in this case, you get 5 points to add to your pretty incredible tally at the moment.
So I, in theory, could just create questions for you going forward that are like 2 trivias. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I have made a mistake. I really thought... I thought, number one, and this was naive, because I was like, I just learned that there aren't 64 teams in the March Madness bracket, there are 68. But the person that taught me that was you. So, like, that wasn't smart. The number of races on the F1 calendar, I thought that would catch you out because it's gone up and up and up recently. Obviously, you would know the NHL season. I did hope that the Chicago Cubs... I thought you might get 2 points there. And instead you got 5. So good news for me. You are now on 7 points to nothing. So wow, there's some catching up to do.
Yeah, there sure is. We're gonna we'll make it fair. I'm not gonna just shut you out. But yeah, that was a big risk. We could have done a thing, I suppose, to make that more of an interesting, like, gamified thing. I guess in theory we could, like, make it so that if the person gets it wrong, it's a point for the question asker because, like, you asked a smart enough or a deceptive enough question. I don't know, but we can. Personally, I'm not for that since I'm up 7-0. But we can.
Yeah, 7-0.
We can leave that to the
Hey,
people.
7-0 is a try and a conversion. That's a 1-score game.
That is.
If we were playing rugby.
Or a touchdown and an extra point. So, there you go. Or
God, look at that.
Or Is that the margin of the world? Well, no, because they scored 1 goal. And did Germany get... It doesn't matter. Okay. I was thinking of 2014. Okay, anyway. This has been a great episode. I'm excited for part 2 of this. Whenever we get to it, this will be a fun discussion. We've got a couple interesting ideas in the hopper that we'll think through. It's late March right now. I'm coming over there. We're going to come up with some fun content to do while we're there. Yes, hopefully, ideally, record a reunion episode together, which would be very fun in the same room.
At Heathrow Airport.
At Heathrow Airport, yes, because I hear the most romantic place in the world.
You come through the doors, and I've got a desk set up at the arrivals. The camera's already on. I'm like Perfect. Ushering other people out of the way.
Perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
It's going to be great. I hope that we get another. I hope we get another episode in before then. But yeah, we'll definitely be very active on the TikTok. We've returned to after both of our lives got a little bit complicated, a little bit busy. We're back on the short form as well. And yeah, we'll if we don't see you beforehand, we'll do this in person. But yeah, we'll get another episode in there before then. Until that time, Adam, I've enjoyed talking about away days. Have a fabulous rest of your March Madness. And I'll tell you what happened in the Chinese Grand Prix.
Yes, please do. Very excited. Congrats to Lewis on the P1 in the sprint qualifying. Let's hope that he wins later. All right. Bye, Harry.
See you, Adam.